What is up, my fellow Faustians, or fellow Our House fans? Now, I was going to do my own Would You Rather, with the golden question being, would you rather have your own palisman, or be able to use glyph magic, which I still want to know, so there's a voting poll, because I still can't decide. I mean, it would be fun to see what kind of glyph combos you could come up with, but I would also like to have my own magic pet that allows me to fly. It's a tough choice, at least for me. But anyway, what caught my attention while making this was the coven system, and I thought I would just focus on that instead. So the question is, if you had to choose from one of the 9 covens, which one would you choose? Bottom of the list for me would have to be potions. Now again, this is just my opinion. The reason I put potions at the bottom of the list is because I don't think you need magic to use potions. There might be some other factors that we didn't get to see, like with the coven head, but I'm gonna ignore that. But it does raise the question, if you got a potion sigil, does that mean you can't use any sort of magic ever again? Or perhaps there is more to it than meets the eye. And a funny story I talked with my friend about, but this was about chemistry, and I asked him, would kids these days find chemistry more interesting if it was just given a different name, like alchemy, and it was used like magic? So instead of a teacher showing up in like a lab coat, he would show up in like wizard robes or something, and would show students how to use chemistry like magical spells. Of course, there's the obvious issue of health and safety regulations, and people would probably go blind from chemical burns. And you would probably be labeled as something of a chemical bioterrorist or something. But if you can get around that, wouldn't it be cool? But anyway, moving on. Next on my list, second from the bottom, would have to be illusions. Now someone like Gus can use these to great effect, and illusions are useful in battle, but it's not something that I would personally want. I prefer not to hide behind illusions. Again, not saying it isn't useful, just not something that I would personally want. Now, the next one on my list is healing. Now, when I play any sort of game that involves classes, the secondary class that I would normally choose would be healing. But in this case, where you have to pick one track, and you're stuck with that forever, I wouldn't be up for it, unless I decided to dedicate myself as like a doctor or a healer. But if I had the choice to pick more than one track, I would pick healing as my second class. It's such a useful thing to have, and if you can heal yourself, that's even better. Now, people are probably going to hate me for this one, but the next on my list is plant magic. Now, I'm not saying that it's bad. In fact, I could be very wrong about placing it this low on the list, but I just think the other covens might be a bit more unique in terms of their abilities. Now, plant magic still has a lot of uses, both in mobility and offense and defense, and we saw Terra Snapdragon use it on Rain to hypnotize them, even though Rain was able to counter it. And you can even summon plants to fight for you as your allies, sort of like abominations. And I'm pretty sure you can use plants to teleport, or it's just them using it to tunnel underground. Either way, it's still incredibly strong. So I could still be very wrong about placing it this low on the list. But anyway, let's move on. The next on my list is the Oracle Coven. And the reason for this is I don't think we got to see enough of the Oracle Coven to judge it. But from what we have seen, in the Oracle track, you have telepathy and are able to see into the future, which on its own is very OP, but it's unclear in terms of clarity how far you can see into both time and space. And it's also unclear even if you need a vial sac to be able to use it. We saw before that Luce could just use it with a crystal ball, so it seems that Oracle users need that specific item in order to use their magic. So perhaps you don't even need magic of your own in order to use it. But perhaps there is more to it than we've seen, like being able to weed through shadows, or using projectiles like that purple flame. but from what we have seen, it's still an incredibly useful thing to have. Telepathy, seeing the future, and summoning spirits to fight for you, it's still an incredibly useful thing to have, even if you do need a support item like a crystal ball. Next is beast keeping. Even in the human world, this form of magic would be very strong, being able to summon and control animals, no matter how big or small. And in a magical fantasy realm, filled with magical beast, this would be extremely powerful and useful. And when you get to the level of Everwolf, being able to give yourself beast-like characteristics and senses, that would just make you all the more powerful. And I feel like this form of magic is pretty underestimated sometimes. Third place is bard magic. Now, I'm pretty sure this works with and without the instrument, using sound waves to create magic simply by whistling, or even singing, or carrying around your choice of instrument like a weapon, and using it to create what we've seen from bard magic, shockwaves and thunderstorms, or even barriers. And the cherry on top for bard magic being able to control other people's movements, or, from what I've seen, changing the molecular structure of other substances, like we saw Rain use on the potion given to them by Terra Snapdragon. All in all, bard magic is a pretty good all-rounder, with many uses, and perhaps people can counter your magic with something as simple as earmuffs, but you can still use other things besides hypnotism. And who knows, in this modern day and age, if you get a little creative, maybe you could use radio waves to transmit a hypnotizing song to millions of people, and control their every move, if you were that devious. Now the silver medal for me has to be construction magic. On its own, it's essentially earthbending from Avatar, which if you've seen is incredibly strong, offensively and defensively. And it might not be the most flexible of things, as something like plant magic, but it was one particular thing that had me intrigued, and that's the power glyphs that construction magic wielders can use. And it's like the perfect support item, which works on anyone's magic. And even Luce didn't have a glyph that could do anything like that, but perhaps if she was given enough time, she could have figured something out. But if they had someone in their group from the construction coven, it would have been interesting to see what they could have used with those sort of power glyphs. We've already seen how much it can boost someone's magic, so who knows what it would have been like. Perhaps they would have swatted Balos like a bug at the end, but that's the main reason I chose construction. Now, you know what this means. For me, the top spot, and my final pick, is Abomination Magic. Now, perhaps I'm biased because Amity is my favorite character, but this form of magic seems to have everything. It allows for good mobility, and has good offensive and defensive abilities, allowing you to create weapons like blades or gauntlets, creating shields, and even being able to fire off projectiles, allowing you to fight in both close range and long range environments, or even summoning abominations to fight for you, or just serve you in everyday tasks. And the stronger forms of this magic, like being able to teleport yourself and others to any location, or what we saw with Darius, being able to coat yourself in abomination goo, or possibly changing your own body into abomination goo, which we've seen is incredibly strong. But of course that's high level magic, coming from the coven head himself. Even Amity's father Alador couldn't seem to do anything like that. But perhaps if the show continues, Amity will be able to transform like that one day, which would be an interesting thing to see. So Abomination Magic has got to be my final pick. Out of all the 9 tracks, if I had to pick one, it's got to be the Abomination Coven. But I am curious, if you had to choose from one of the 9 tracks, which one would you pick? Because everyone has different preferences, and each form of magic is unique, and I would be interested to hear what your choice is. But anyway, that's all for now. I'll see you all later.